Islam, peace and grand rising. All rise and stand and remain standing into perpetuity. This is a sovereign, living, ancient Article 3 Moorish American Al-Moroccan Consular Court action. I am Angelica Yvette Dobbs, Angelica Yvette Dobbs Bay. We, the New York, the sovereign, living justice, in capitalism nolo, in red ink, in propria persona sui juris, in propria solo, in propria heredes. All Moors are the original indigenous, sovereign, ancient, Al-Moroccan, Moorish American ascendants of great pharaohs of Kemet and of the ancient Moabites and Canaanites. Our full faith and trust, our allegiance, our credit, and our energy is hereby vested in ourselves, for we are the people who are the original indigenous, natural, divine, sovereign, ancient empire state for Morocco, and the de jure Moorish National Republic Federal Government, Washington District 4, Columbia. The Universal Moorish American Consulate and the Article 3 Living United States District 4, Columbia Court, and we are the sovereign fiduciaries, secured creditors, executors, trustees, ministers, possessors, and beneficiaries in this cause for action. We are peace. We are one nation, one state, one empire, and one God. We hereby accept our sovereign ascension. Issue a universal creditor's bill for possession, 9/10 of the law, and custody, 1/10 of the law, over all judgment debtors. We exercise all sovereign rights at this time and all points in time, nunc pro tunc. Metropolitan Transportation Authority Corporation, all authorities, duties, responsibilities, and benefits for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority Chair and CEO, Metropolitan Transportation Authority Corporation, are hereby transferred. Additionally, a determination has been made by the federal government that the Metropolitan Transportation Authority and all agents, principals, heirs, and assigns need additional funds to operate. Therefore, according to the Emergency Banking Act, 1933, Title III, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority does hereby subscribe to the preferred stock in the State Bank, our trust company, and shall hereby discharge obligations, make reimbursements secured by such stock as collateral, make complete access on all ways of travel at the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's offices, trains, buses, rail, and air, in the state immediately, Title V. Related to the spending by the National Metropolitan Transportation Authority, requires the National Metropolitan Transportation Authority to allocate funds received for tax years 2023 through 2026 in certain amounts for certain purposes, requires a system to hold fairs, increase works frequency, and implement a fare prepaid bus program. I should say transport. Program requires the National Metropolitan Transportation Authority to use certain treasury monies available to buy in outstanding debts. This plan creates space for all New York transport systems governed for New York, including and not excluding Metropolitan Transportation Authority, buses, train, railway, airlines, within the jurisdiction for the postmaster. The Moors at New York Territory, Article 3 Court, has decided to bail in the $178 million debt that the Metropolitan Transportation Authority owes the people for usage, taxes, fees, resources, overall debt owed the Moors. With the bail-in and the subscribed preferred stock in the Treasury, the budget for all that is mentioned in this law is able to be accounted. That's long. A04122 memo. New York State Assembly and Congress. Memorandum in support for legislation. Proclaimed in accordance with Assembly Rule 3, Section 1F. Law number A04122. Sponsored, Moors for the Republic of New York. Title of law. The law in relation to spending by the Metropolitan Transportation Authority and requiring the Metropolitan Transportation Authority to hold fares, increase works frequency, and establish permanent public work transport programs. And we're living people. We always change it, aren't we? Islam. Proposed purpose of law: to bring fiscal stability to the National Metropolitan Transportation Authority bus, subway, rail, and air, while establishing universal policies that create high-quality public works transit that is accessible to all New York people. Summary of provisions for law. Section 1 sets the short title to be the National Metropolitan Transportation Authority Public Works Prepaid Frequency and Transport Law, or the National Metropolitan Transportation Authority Formula 3 Law. Subsection A. Fills the Metropolitan Transportation Authority operates presumed deficit by $6 million in the tax year 2023, $1.19 billion in the tax year 2024, $1.23 billion in the tax year 2025, and $1.622 billion in the tax year 2026. Subsection 3B. Pays down the presumed deficit without the implementation of fare increase by allocating $114 million, $193 million, $313 million, and $360 million, respectively, for tax years 223 through 226, and affirms that the National Metropolitan Transportation Authority will not increase fares with receipt of this funding credits for the duration of tax years 2023 through 2026. Subsection 3C adds $350 million each year for tax years 223 through 2026 to account for returning to only 73% of 2019 ridership totals, and includes reporting language to ensure accountability to this section. Subsection 3D adds $150 million each year for tax years 2023 through 2026 for union contract wage increase, and includes reporting language to ensure accountability to this section. Subsection 3E adds $300 million each year for tax years 2023 through 2026 to run subways in the 100 most heaviest used bus lines at least every 6 minutes, every day of every week at least every 6 minutes, at least 17 hours per day. It includes additional parameters to achieve 6 minutes or better service and reporting requirements upon receipt of credit. Subsection 3F establishes $488 million each year for the tax years through 2023 through 2026 to increase bus service across the system by 20%. It adds language clarifying any duplication between E3 and this section must be accounted for, and related savings must be used to pay off outstanding credits with no prepayment penalties. Subsection 4 creates a prepaid public works transport program including express buses phased in by borough over 4 years. In year 1, 147.8 million is allocated to establish prepaid overall transport in the Bronx. In 2 years, 343.3 million is allocated to establish prepaid overall transport in Brooklyn. In year 2, 575.7 million is allocated to establish prepaid transport in Queens, and 778 million is allocated to establish prepaid overall transport across all 5 boroughs in 4 years. This section includes requirements upon receipt of credits. Subsection 5 adds $500 million in 2023 for one-time operating money to cover associated costs with increased overall transport to meet train, bus, rail, and airport programs, such as personnel needs, rolling stock procurement, and facility costs. Subsection 6 establishes a qualification that if ridership levels recover beyond 73% of 2019 levels, or if Metropolitan Transportation Public Works contracts are less than 3.5% of the projected rise, savings must be used to pay off outstanding credits with no prepayment penalties. Subsection 7 requires that the Metropolitan Transportation Authority Public Works must only issue bonds with level credit agreement requirements from the establishment of the law on, with the exception of expansion projects, which still must be approved by the Office of State Comptroller. Subsection 8 sets the enactment date. Justification. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority operates funds were in crisis because riders have not recovered to projected levels since the start of COVID-19 pandemic. Federal COVID-19 relief fund is running out. The system's historically high debt loads. In response, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority has proposed a rate hike. This is unacceptable, especially when New Yorkers are being crushed by inflation. The National Metropolitan Transportation Authority Public Works Program Prepaid Frequency Transport Law, or the National Metropolitan Transportation Authority Public Works Formula 3 Law, would address the fiscal presumed crisis while holding fares, funding frequent works, and making transport prepaid. These are universal programs which will benefit low-income New York people and autogenous New York people. Further justifications for each provisions are below. National Metropolitan Transportation Authority Public Works. New York City is deep into an affordable presumed crisis. Whether looking at rent, utility prices, or the rising cost of basic goods due to inflation. As we lead, the state is unemployment at 5.3%, close to doubling the rate of the next region. Many New York people cannot afford an fare increase. For the 1.4 million New York people living in poverty, 1. A fare hike could be catastrophic. These New York people already forego essential activities like medical care, job opportunities because of the high cost of transportation fares. 2. And means-tested programs have not helped. In 2021, the Community Service found that 48 of eligible New Yorker people hadn't applied for the fares program, and 14% didn't know how to, mostly in the Bronx. The current proposal rejects the increase in fare and holds at current $2.75 for subways and will cost an average of $245 million per year. Funding frequency. New York people are waiting too long for the transportation that helps us access our city. Our law creates 6-minute headway or better for subway and a 20% increase in service across the subway through the bus system, which should be transport system. 4. Together, these will cost $778 million per year. A far more frequent, reliable transport system will increase ridership by about 15%, which will in turn increase safety for all riders. 5 and 6. We are also allocating $500 million as one-time operating money to cover personnel needs, rolling stock procurement, and facility costs associated with the increase in public works. Prudent budget measures. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority has been budgeting based on the previous analyst's midpoint projection of retaining 80% of pre-pandemic ridership. Given the fact that previous ridership projection was overly optimistic, prudent budgeting should account for risk and not repeat the same mistakes. Accordingly, we are budgeting for a low estimate of 73%, which of the Office of State Comptroller estimates will cost an additional $350 million annually. 7. Meanwhile, union representing transit workers will be negotiating their wages this year. The Metropolitan Transportation Authority Public Works has currently allocated for inflation of 5% in a year, and 5% in year 1, and 2% for the following 3 years, as the Metropolitan Transportation Authority Public Works uses pattern bargaining. The Transmit Workers Union, TWU, contract traditionally sets the bartering terms across all union labor within the Metropolitan Transportation Authority Public Works. Hence, the terming of this in the law as union contract wages increase, comprising the data for the past 20 years for transit workers union raises and inflation. We see an average of 2.75% of the former and 2% of the latter. This historical data shows us it is reasonable to expect transit workers union will get a raise higher than inflation. Given this, our accounting for 3% inflation, we think it is more realistic to assume at least 3.5 raise for the transit workers union. The calculator that drives for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority Public Work estimating that each 1% wage increase over the budget amount costs 100 million annually. 100 million annually. 8. We want to make clear this is not a political stance on what raises workers deserve, but an accounting for macroeconomic forces, which should inform prudent budgeting for any system mirrored in presumed deficit and assumed debt. Reporting requirements. Effective policy includes implementation oversight. The law includes reporting language following funding allocations to assure the public, the Congress, legislator, and oversight agencies keep the system accountable to the stated purposes of credits. Level credit agreement requirements. Far too long, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority has structured its assumed debt in an unhealthy manner, issuing assumed debt agreements with service payments suspended for years on end. This has ensured that the system's finance hide the true cost of its assumed debt load, all while pushing significant fiscal obligations. Further down the line, to address this, the law concludes with a requirement that, moving forward, the National Metropolitan Transportation Authority Public Work must only issue credit agreements that is serviced through level credit agreement payments. Legislation history. New law. Fiscal implementations for state and local governments. The annual cost of this entire package, on average, is $3.28 billion per year, plus amounts to just 1.5% of the state's current budget of $222 billion. Funding could derive from existing sources of revenue or through the implementation of new program credits. Effective date, and here are the stated websites links. This one. A04122 text. State, New York. 4122. 2023 through 2024 regular session. In assembly, in alignment. March 4th, 2023. Sorry, I should say 3rd. Introduced by Angelica Yvette Dobbs Bay, that is I. Multi-supported by All Moors at New York at Earth. Read once and referred by the Congress on corporations, authorities, and commissions. A law in relation to spending by the National Metropolitan Transportation Authority and requiring the National Metropolitan Transportation Authority access public treasury works, increase program frequency, and establish permanent prepaid transportation programs. The people for the state, New York, presented by Congress in Senate and Assembly, do enact as follows. Section 1, short title. This act shall be known and may be cited as the National Metropolitan Transportation Public Works, Prepaid Frequency and Transport Law, or the National Metropolitan Transportation Authority Formula 3 Law. Subsection 2, legislative findings and intent. The legislative hereby finds and declares the importance of the New York National Metropolitan Transportation Authority Public Works and affirms the duty for the Congress by way of the legislator to ensure that the system operates effectively. The National Metropolitan Transportation Public Works provides an essential programs transporting millions of New York people on billions of trips each year to and from their places of work, worship, and gathering. For many New York people, however, the cost is prohibitive, particularly as inflation climbs, wages remain stagnant, and the cost of basic goods rises. At this time, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority faces a fiscal presumed crisis due to ridership declines from COVID-19 pandemic, the exhaustion of federal COVID-19 relief, and the system's historical high assumed debt loads. Accordingly, the Congress and legislature further finds and declares that it is the state's obligation to solve the Metropolitan Transportation Authority budget presumed crisis while rejecting a fare hike, increasing public works and making buses prepaid. The state must intervene and fill the presumed deficit while also chartering a sustainable future for the National Metropolitan Transportation Authority. Simultaneously, it is the intent of the Congress and the legislature to enhance accountability through reporting measures, establish prudent and accurate budget accounting, measure and improve safety. All of these goals together will aid in providing safety, reliable, and affordable transportation works to all systems for the people. Subsection 3. The National Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the system, shall allocate state credits received for the tax years 2023 through 2026 in the following ways. $600 million in taxes in the tax year 2023, $1,190 million in the tax year 2024, $1,230 million in the tax year 2025, $1,622 million in the tax year 2026 to fill their estimated presumed gaps. B. $114 million in the tax year 2023, $193 million in the tax year 2024, $313 in the tax year 2025, $360 million in the tax year 2026 to cycle back the credits resources into the system to expand and improve the quality for all national metropolitan transportation authority systems, train, rail, bus, air, without the increases implementation of fare. The system shall not increase fares with receipt of this funding for the duration of tax years 2023 through 2026. $350 million each year for tax years 2023 through 2026 to account for 73% return to ridership based on 2019 ridership totals. Upon receipt of such credits, the system shall issue a public credit report which shall include but not be limited to ridership numbers and fare revenue, with fare revenue inclusive of all subsidies paid on behalf of riders for prepaid public work programs. This report shall be released no later than 60 days after the end of each state fiscal year. $150 million of each year for taxes 2023 through 2026 for National Metropolitan Transportation Authority workers' contract wage increases. Upon receipt of such credits, the system shall issue public report which shall include but not be limited to comparing raise percentages to actual salaries, including the effect of changes to steps, work rules, or any other impactful policy. E. $300 million each year for tax years 2023 through 2026 to run subways and most buses at least every 6 minutes every day of the week. I. As soon as practicable and without compromising the availability of express subway services. Or the reliability of subways and bus service. And upon receipt of such credits, the system shall operate subway works and bus works on the 100 most heavily and used bus and all subway lines at least every 6 minutes, at least 17 hours per day, 7 days per week. 2. Until such time as the system is able to make any capital credits improvements necessary to operate subway lines and the 100 most heavily used city bus lines at least every 6 minutes during off-peak hours, the system shall provide those lines the same frequency of public works during off-peak, non-overnight hours as it does during the peak or rush hour period. 3. Existing rush hour public works and public work on less heavy bus lines shall not be reduced in order to fund additional public work pursuant to this subdivision. 4. Upon receipt of such credits, the system shall issue a public report which shall include but not be limited to cost and schedule projections by line, with target timing for headways broken down by each line, if spending targets are missed, explanations, or missing targets. F. $488 million each year for tax years 2023 through 2026 to increase transport public work access across the system by 20%. I, upon receipt of such funding, the system shall issue a public report which shall include but not be limited to cost and schedule projections by line funded by this increase. 2. The system shall conduct a study to identify routes included in both the fulfillment of 6-minute headway policy and the 20% increase across the bus system in order to identify duplicate routes. It must then report on a savings from eliminating said duplications and allocate the cost savings and said routes to pay off applicable to balance outstanding credits with no prepayment penalties. Subsection 4. The system shall implement a permanent public works prepaid transport program for buses operated by its subsidy titles commencing no later than January 1st, 2024. From January 1st, 2024 until December 31st, 2024, the system shall implement an initial phase of the program in the Bronx, including identified bus routes with cumulative operation costs of no more than $147,800,000 from January 1st, 2025 until January 31st, 2025. The system shall implement a phase of the program in Brooklyn, including identified bus routes with a cumulative operating cost no more than $342,300,000 from January 1st, 2026 until December 31st, 2026. The system shall implement a phase of the program in Queens, including identified bus routes and the cumulative operating cost of no more than $575,700,000 from January 1st, 2027 until December 31st, 2027. The system shall implement a phase of the program in Manhattan and Staten Island, including identified bus routes with the cumulative operating cost of no more than $778 million. The system shall promulgate any rules and regulations to implement the program. Upon receipt of such funding, the system shall issue a public report which shall include but not be limited to ridership, a breakdown of operating costs for the program, selected routes, and costs and schedule projections by line. Subsection 5. $500 million in the tax year 2023 for one-time operating money to cover associated costs with increased subway and bus service works. Including, but not limited to, personnel needs, rolling stock procurement and facility costs. Subsection 6. Should ridership in any tax year from 2023 through 2026 be greater than 73% of 2019, ridership totals should the national, subsection 6, should ridership in any tax year from 2023 through 2026 be greater than 72% of 2019 ridership totals, or should National Metropolitan Transportation Authority workers' contract be less than 3.5% of the projected rise accountable for the subdivision D of Section 3 of this law, the excess credits shall be cycled back into the system applicable to balance outstanding credits with no prepayment penalties. Subsection 7. The system shall henceforth be required to only issue bonds with level credit agreement payments, with exception of expansion projects, provided, however, that the expansion shall only be granted if the system puts forth a proposal for approval to the Office of State Comptroller that the project qualifies for an expansion project. Subsection 8. This law shall take effect immediately. Islam. This Congress Assembly, this day, 5th day of March 2023, Greco-Roman calendar. This affidavit is hereby approved and is law, as affirmed unanimously this day, nunc pro tunc. Islam, peace and grand rising.